The life and demise of half-hanged MacNaghten.
Bartholomew MacNaghten was a merchant in Derry and a magistrate for County Antrim who married Mary MacManus. When Bartholomew died in 1742, the family estates were left to his 6-year-old eldest son John, including Prehen House, a fairly prosperous estate with an annual income of £600. This is where John MacNaghten received his early education. The Royal School, Raphoe as it looked in 1906, constructed by Bishop Nicholas Forster in 1737. The Royal Schoolhouse, Castle Road, Raphoe, County Donegal, today May 2026. John graduated to Trinity College, Dublin in March 1740. However, his studies in Dublin were curtailed due to his gambling, so he left Trinity the following year in 1741. This is what John MacNaghten, born 1722, died 1761, may have looked like when he was 39 years old. John quickly became enamored of the extravagant lifestyle of Dublin, where he became a popular and colourful character. From his school days onward, he became addicted to gambling and eventually lost a large portion of his inheritance. John's good friend Clotworthy Skeffington, 1st Earl of Massereene, introduced him to Mary Daniel, sister of the Earl's wife Anne and daughter of the Dean of Down, the Reverend Richard Daniel. John and Mary are married on 16th August 1752 at St Mary's Church of Ireland Church, Dublin. This somewhat restores John's future, having also made a solemn promise to his wife that he would not gamble again except for a trifling sum. By 1756, John had accumulated significant debts. A writ was issued for his arrest. Officers followed him home one evening, where a brawl broke out after John refused to be arrested. John's wife, Mary, who is pregnant with their 3rd child, dies during childbirth. However, the baby lives, a daughter named Cassandra. John is so heartbroken at her death, he blames himself and contemplates suicide. In 1757, the Earl of Massereene secures John a post as tax collector at Coleraine, a job which pays a good salary of £200 per year, but John embezzles £800 of public money to support his gambling and loses his job. The Earl has to pay a bond of £2,000. John's estate is sequestered, and by 1760 he is penniless. Prehen House, Prehen Park in Derry, Londonderry, overlooking the banks of the River Foyle. About 1760, MacNaghten was invited to spend a few weeks at Prehen House as a guest of his childhood friend, Andrew Knox, MP for County Donegal, and his wife Honoria, their son George and daughter Mary Ann. A relationship develops between John and the 15-year-old heiress, Mary Ann. John eventually asks Andrew for his daughter's hand in marriage, but Andrew refuses, knowing John's history for gambling. They agree not to discuss marriage again. Andrew believed the matter is now closed. John leads Mary Ann to believe that her father has agreed. Early one morning at a Joshua Swettenham's house in Derry, John presses Mary Ann to marry him in front of a young witness, Mr. Andrew Hamilton. John starts reading the marriage vows from a prayer book and insists Mary Ann respond, and she does, adding after each response, "Only if my father will consent." 10 days after the secret mock wedding, Mary Ann plans a week-long visit to Castle Ray, Ards, County Donegal, to visit her friend, Angel Ray, a daughter of this gentleman, Henry Ray. To break the journey, John and Mary Ann plan to spend the night in Streban at the home of John McCausland, Irish MP. Whether Mrs. Elizabeth McCausland had received any caution about MacNaghten or she suspected something, she decided to place Mary Ann in her own room. However, during the night, MacNaghten attempts to get into Mary Ann's room but fails. The next morning, Mary Ann and John take a walk in McCausland's garden. John, having led Mary Ann into a secluded location, attempts to force himself onto her. She is able to repel him with the utmost indignation, and which she never forgave. Mary Ann confides in Angel about the mock wedding at Swettenham's and what happened at McCausland's. Angel is so concerned, she tells her father Henry, who in turn sends a message to Andrew Knox. Fearing MacNaghten may be lurking about in Ards, Henry sends Mary Ann back home to Prehen. They fear Mary Ann may be abducted, so she is sent to stay with an uncle in Sligo. John and his uncle Charles MacManus also make their way to Sligo. At an assembly, a John McGill, a friend of the Knoxes, whispers loudly so everyone can hear, John MacNaghten is a great scoundrel. John ignores his comment. Later, John, who had been drinking heavily in the company of a Mr. Gethings, determines that he should challenge McGill to a duel, which later that night McGill accepts. The following morning they prepare for the duel. With John is his uncle, Charles McManus, and with John McGill is Thomas Knox. Both discharge their pistols and both miss. They both reload and fire again. McGill wounds MacNaghten in the leg, 2 inches below his calf. The ball passed right through. MacNaghten asks, "I hope you do not now think me a great scoundrel." McGill replies, "By God, but I do." November 1760, John travels to England to prevent being taken into custody and also to solicit a return as Member of Parliament for the borough of Carrickfergus. This would provide him with a degree of protection from imprisonment and also some degree of influence, so he might continue his relationship with Mary Ann. John is returning from England via Scotland after spending some time in Bath and London gambling. He is pressed for money and borrows £30 from an innkeeper, pretending he had an intimacy with an unnamed lord that the innkeeper knows. John travels from England to Enniskillen, which is about 15 miles from Swanlinbar, County Cavan. He knows Mary Ann, her mother, Honoria, and her aunt, Angel Ray, are at the spa in Swanlinbar to take the mineral waters. MacNaghten follows Mary Ann to Swanlinbar, where he hires a cabin for 3 days. By day, disguised as a sailor, he hides among the bushes, continually watching for the young lady, hoping an opportunity arises so he can seize and carry her off. Day 4 of the Knox ladies' visit to Swanlinbar. An old woman who's keeping MacNaghten's cabin finds some bullets and powder. She suspects he may be a robber and reports this to Andrew Campbell, Bishop of Kilmore, who is at the well. He advertises MacNaghten's description and offers a reward for his capture. John goes to the bishop and explains the whole affair. The Right Honourable Silver Oliver, an Irish landowner and Privy Councillor politician and a friend of the Knox family, escorts the Knox ladies away from Swanlinbar to William Willoughby Cole at Florence Court, Enniskillen. William Willoughby Cole, an Irish peer and politician, takes the Knox ladies into his protection at Florence Court. The next morning, John goes to Florence Court and requests an interview with Lord Mountflorence and asks to speak to Mary Ann. Mountflorence refuses unless he swears an oath to leave Miss Knox and her family alone if she so wishes, but John does not submit to the request. John then asks to speak with Miss Ray, and after she agrees, their discussion lasts more than 2 hours. John makes allegations to support his marriage legitimacy. From Florence Court, he goes back to Enniskillen, where he stayed 2 nights at Mr. Howard's, the White Hart Inn, and vows to carry off the lady by force. John had hoped to succeed to the estates of his uncle, Edmund MacNaghten of Beardyville House, who was then 82 and without any children after his wife, Leonora Vesey, died. These desires were crushed in 1761 when the old man married a young second wife, Hannah Johnston, who he hoped would provide an heir, thus preventing John from inheriting, as he was horrified by his nephew's conduct.
This is the gate lodge to Beardyville House, Cloyfen, near Bushmills. This was the home of Edmund MacNaghten, Beardyville House, Cloyfen, located between Coleraine and Bushmills in County Antrim. Edmund MacNaghten lived until he was 102 and fathered 2 sons, Edmund Alexander MacNaghten, who was MP for County Antrim and Orford, and this gent, Sir Francis Workman MacNaghten, 1st Baronet, who was an Anglo-Irish judge in India. Edmund was a grandfather of this gentleman, Sir William Hay MacNaghten, 1st Baronet, who was a British civil servant in India and who played a major part in the First Anglo-Afghan War. Edmund was a great-grandfather of this gent, Sir Edward MacNaghten, also known as Baron MacNaghten, who was an Anglo-Irish law lord, barrister, rower, and conservative unionist politician. Allegedly, Mary Ann was engaged to this gentleman, John Creighton, 2nd Lord Erne of Crom Castle. Knowing Andrew Knox would be attending the opening of Parliament in Dublin, MacNaghten gathered a band of loyal men, George MacDougall, James MacCarroll, and Thomas Dunlap, and planned to ambush the Knox coach close to the coach inn, Cloughcore on the main A5 road, from Prehen to Dublin. On the 11th November, The Knox postchaise stopped at the Coach Inn for a change of horses and refreshments, after continuing a short distance at about 11:30. Passing the cabin belonging to a Mr. Keyes, MacNaghten and his associates rushed out, each armed with pistols, and forced the driver of the carriage to stop. This is the actual Knox postchaise carriage, which is on exhibition at the Tower Museum in Derry City. MacDougall came up to the coach driver presenting his pistol, threatening if he continues, he will be shot. MacCulloch presents his blunderbuss, but MacNaghten fires, first wounding his hand. MacCulloch snapped his blunderbuss, but it misfires. MacNaghten fires 2 more shots at him, wounding his knee and groin. From the coach window, Andrew Knox fired his pistol at MacNaghten, but he missed. MacNaghten rounded the coach, firing into it, as Mary Ann attempted to shield her father. 5 bullets lodged in her left side. James Love, firing from behind a turf stack, lodged 3 swan shots in MacNaghten's shoulders. Mary Ann was carried from Keyes' cabin to a farmhouse about 100 yards away and laid on a bed. She was covered in blood and crying out, my side," and calling upon God to put an end to her intolerable pain. A doctor-law from Strabane attended to her. She died about 4 hours later.
MacNaghten and his accomplices fled. Young George Knox rode to Strabane and returned 30 minutes later with a party of Enniskillen light horse under the command of a Fermanagh man, Sergeant MacGuckin.
Sergeant MacGuckin set out in pursuit, in the direction of Cumberclawdy and Dungiven, leading towards Antrim, as they thought this was the most probable route the murderers would take. MacNaghten rode about a mile on a horse belonging to one of his associates, which was held in a little wood near Keyes' cabin. Eventually, finding himself alone, he dismounted the black horse, removed the bridle and saddle, and threw them in a ditch, turning the horse loose into a field. He proceeded a little further on foot and came upon the house of Thomas Winsley and concealed himself in Winsley's hayloft. On the 7th December, Sergeant Fitzmaurice Caldwell and Private Reed are told that MacNaghten is hiding in this hayloft. The 2 soldiers entered the hayloft. MacNaghten sees them and fires his pistol at them. They instantly return fire, but both parties miss. They hear another shot. MacNaghten discharges his pistol at his own head, but the ball fell out, leaving a powder mark on his ear. MacNaghten is seized without further resistance and taken to Lifford jail. It was the men from Sir James Caldwell's regiment of Enniskillen Light Horse who captured MacNaghten, and also the same person who penned John MacNaghten's biography. This is Lifford Old Courthouse, where MacNaghten was tried for murder. Dunlap, one of John's accomplices, is captured on the 15th after being found in a large meal chest belonging to a miller at a place near Ballymoney called Ballybogey, County Antrim. Designed by Michael Priestley, built 1746 to 1750 with a coat of arms of George II. Ironically, as inscribed, Lifford Jail was raised by the County of Donegal under the directions of the trustees Andrew Knox, Oliver McCausland, George Vaughan, Nathaniel Nesbitt, and Francis Mansfield. As it may have looked in 1761, the Diamond, Lifford. The courthouse is located on the right, and the jail is at the end of the street. John's brother Bartholomew pays him another short visit in jail. He leaves 3 guineas with the clergyman of the parish of Strabane to bury John and his associate Dunlap. From the time MacNaghten is first imprisoned to his trial, he expressed no remorse for what he has done. On Monday, 7th December, MacNaghten was summoned to his trial. Due to John's injuries, this gent, Justice Baron Richard Mountney, along with Mr. Justice Scott and Mr. Justice Smith, granted him until Friday 11th to prepare his defense. Counsel for the Crown was Mr. Slen and Mr. Helen, for the prisoner Mr. Hamilton of Strabane. MacNaghten said, "No man ever loved a woman better than he loved Miss Knox, and he had no intention to kill anybody, much less her." He declared, "I did not fire at the coach until I felt myself wounded. I came with a company to carry her off, as I consider her my wife. I armed my company so they might oppose any force." He produced several witnesses, but their testimony was contradicted by 2 witnesses for the Crown who swore that he cried out several times, "I'll shoot Mary Ann." The trial lasted 14 hours, from 9 o'clock until 11 at night. MacNaghten stated that it was very important that the court consider Dunlap, as he was acting wholly under his influence. However, each was found guilty of murder and sentenced to death by hanging. The common people sympathized with MacNaghten and looked upon him as no more than a victim. Therefore, a willing carpenter could not be found about Strabane to erect the gallows. An uncle of the Knox family and a party of gentlemen agreed to build the gallows on a plain between Strabane and Lifford. Contrary to law, criminals must be executed with their fetters on. An old blacksmith who had previously refused to remove MacNaghten's fetters is compelled to do so by a party of the Light Horse. On 15 December 1761, at 1 o'clock, with a large crowd assembled. John enquired whether his head was to be stuck up on the jail, and seemed comforted when the sheriff assured him it would not. Unfettered, he ascended the ladder, and when the old Cavan hangman was about to put the rope around his neck, he took it out of his hand and put it around his own neck. He then threw himself off the gallows with great force, hoping the sudden jerk would immediately end his life. But to the contrary, the rope broke and he fell to the ground. The sympathetic crowd thought that he would attempt to escape, and they favored this and would have helped. However, he did not and was soon apprehended by officers. Before going to the gallows for the second time, MacNaghten said, "I vow that no one will ever speak of me as half-hanged MacNaghten." He reascended the ladder with great calmness and composure. The halter was taken off Dunlap and placed around MacNaghten's neck, and he allowed himself to be turned off the ladder, and after a few involuntary struggles, his life expired. Dunlap was executed a short time after. This is the old Camas Juxta Morn Christ Church of Ireland and Graveyard, Patrick Street, Strabane, circa 1860, erected by the first Earl of Abercorn in 1619. This is the burial place of John MacNaghten and Thomas Dunlap, Patrick Street Graveyard, Church Street, Strabane, today May 2026. Their bodies hung for some time, they were taken down and their heads cut off. Their bodies and heads were both buried together in one unmarked grave at the back of the graveyard. What was left of MacNaghten's estate was inherited by his daughter Cassandra and her husband, Captain Joseph Hardy. However, after lawsuits by John's creditors in 1791 and 1797, they were obliged by the Court of Chancery to sell Benvarden estate. It was bought and is currently maintained by Hugh and Valerie Montgomery. John's youngest daughter, Cassandra Hardy, is allegedly buried in John Shane du MacNaghten's tomb, Bonamagee Friary, County Antrim. John Shane du MacNaghten's tombstone bears the following inscription: "Ere lieth the body of John MacNaghten, first secretary to Randall, 1st Earl of Antrim, who departed this mortality in the year of our Lord God, 1630. Rathmullen Priory is the reputed resting place of Mary Ann Knox in the family tomb, which is unmarked.